My brother-in-law, Kevin, surprised us by saying, "Truth is, I sold our house." My husband and I were so shocked that we couldn't speak. But the most surprised person was my mother-in-law. She asked why we did that and why we hadn't come to pick her up. My mother-in-law was really upset and started arguing with Kevin to calm down. Kevin tried to explain why he sold the house. "My name is Sandra, and I work from home with my husband, Robert. We loved working from home because we could take breaks whenever we needed." Then, my mother-in-law came to live with us. We were doing fine financially, but she kept asking us why we weren't going out to work. Every time she questioned us, I felt exhausted and frustrated. We tried to explain that we were working from home, but she didn't understand. She thought we were just fooling around and not thinking about our future. My mother-in-law was worried and often said she should have gone to live with Kevin instead. Kevin is Robert's brother, and he married a wealthy woman named Carol. But we knew Kevin wouldn't come to pick her up because he was too busy enjoying his rich wife's money. So, my mother-in-law kept waiting for Kevin to come and take her to his big house, hoping it would eventually become her house. But we knew it was unlikely to happen because Robert had already made it clear that she could live with him. However, Kevin refused to let his mother live with him. So we ended up living together. Even though we were called unemployed for doing remote work, we accepted it because that's just how my mother-in-law is. But then, out of nowhere, we got a call from Kevin. "I'll be coming over this weekend," he said, and then hung up before we could respond. Robert and I were confused about what to do. My mother-in-law overheard and got excited, thinking Kevin was coming to pick her up. "He's coming to pick me up. Please help me pack," she said, dragging Robert to her room. But Robert tried to explain that Kevin probably didn't mean that, but she didn't believe him. "He didn't say anything about picking you up, did he?" Robert asked. "He didn't say it, but he must be coming for me," she insisted. We couldn't understand why she was so sure. Since she came to our house, she did whatever she wanted, didn't do any housework, and relied on the money we gave her. We didn't want to force her to stay, so we packed her bags and waited for Kevin to come. When Kevin and his wife arrived over the weekend, they seemed suspiciously nice. My mother-in-law greeted them happily, complaining about us not treating her well. "You guys don't mistreat Mom," Kevin said, defending her. "We're not mistreating her. We give her money and let her eat whatever she likes," Robert explained. "Sandra is handling the house chores," Robert said, looking uneasy, but Kevin seemed suspicious. Robert has always been a bit clueless, probably treating Mom badly without even realizing it. "And it seems Sandra isn't the considerate type," Kevin said, agreeing with my mother-in-law. Hearing this conversation, Robert and I couldn't help but frown. Despite this, we decided to entertain our guests and led them to the living room. We all sat around the table, with Robert and me on one side and the couple on the other. "What are you sitting around for? Serve the tea," my mother-in-law demanded. "I thought you were going to make the tea, mother-in-law," I replied. Making an old woman work. "You see, Kevin, Sandra is this kind of person," she said, even fake crying. I was too stunned by her behavior to argue back. After I served the tea, Kevin and his wife became serious. "The truth is, we sold our house," Kevin said. Robert and I were shocked, and my mother-in-law was the most surprised. "Why would you do something like that? Didn't you come to pick me up?" she asked, flustered. Kevin tried to calm her down, explaining that they were in debt and needed a place to stay temporarily. "What debt?" my mother-in-law asked. "I was trying to start a business, but it didn't go well," Kevin explained, laughing nervously. Robert and I sighed, feeling exasperated. "We only need to stay until we find a new house. Please, we have nowhere else to turn," Kevin pleaded. Feeling a bit conflicted, we agreed to let them stay temporarily, but made them promise to leave within a month. "Got it," Kevin said, still laughing nervously as they went back to prepare to move their things. After Kevin and his wife left, my mother-in-law sat silently, looking thoughtful. We assumed she was still in shock. The next day, their belongings arrived promptly. "We have so much stuff. Where should we put it all?" We might have to sell some or rent a locker, we discussed, while moving Kevin's things. Suddenly, my mother-in-law dropped a bombshell. I've been thinking, wouldn't we be more secure in the future if Kevin's here? So you freeloaders can leave, can't you? She said abruptly. My husband and I were taken aback by her sudden demand. If you insist, I can tolerate Robert staying, but I don't need a wife who can't do anything. Get a divorce, then the space that Sandra was occupying can be used for all these packages, she eagerly suggested, looking at my husband for agreement. What are you talking about? He reacted, astounded as usual. Then, my brother-in-law and his wife arrived. My mother-in-law greeted them joyfully, but I was still shaken by her earlier words. Despite this, my husband decided to ignore them for the moment and asked his brother to deal with the packages. There are more than I thought. Try to reduce the number, rent a locker, or sell some if you have to, my husband suggested. But his brother didn't like the idea. These are important packages. How could I sell them? What if someone steals them from a locker or they get damaged? Are you going to take responsibility, bro? He retorted. My husband shook his head, disappointed by his brother's selfishness. This is our house, you know. It's only natural that you should endure some inconvenience. If you don't like it, find a place to live quickly and leave, my husband asserted. At that moment, my mother-in-law interrupted, shouting, What are you talking about? Didn't I just say if you two are not happy with Kevin and the rest, you can leave? You're basically freeloaders. You're not needed in this house. Kevin is trying to start a business, and all you two do is loaf around the house doing so-called remote work. You're a nuisance. My husband and I looked at each other in disbelief, while my brother-in-law and his wife were surprised by my mother-in-law's words. But then they started to smirk. That might not be a bad idea, Kevin said. Mom, that's a good idea. Yeah, it's a hassle to look for a place, so we could live here. So sell this house to us, right, Carol? I feel uncomfortable with you two around, so it would be helpful if you sold this place to us. Plus, it seems like our mother-in-law is on our side, so sell this place to us, Carol chimed in. My husband and I were dumbfounded at their words. What nonsense are you? My husband began, but was interrupted by my mother-in-law, who gloated, See, both Kevin and Carol are saying the same thing. So what will you do, Robert? If you're going to divorce, you can stay here, she said, glaring at me triumphantly. I braced myself to retaliate, but my husband spoke first. Don't you just say whatever you want? Why does Sandra have to leave? He said, his face red with anger, raising his voice. Don't shout like that. It's better without a burden around, isn't it? My mother-in-law retorted. But my husband responded in an exasperated tone. You don't understand anything. This is Sandra's house. At my husband's words, my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and his wife gasped. My husband continued, adding to the tension. This is the house that Sandra bought for our life together. What? What are you saying? Isn't it the husband's job to buy the house? There's no such rule. Moreover, Sandra covers all of Mom's allowance and living expenses. Sandra said she'd take on that burden because your pension is minimal, and it would be difficult for you to have financial freedom with just that, Robert explained, glaring at his mother-in-law with an intense expression. Despite this, my mother-in-law seemed to disbelieve, looking at me and snickering in disbelief. Unbelievable. Sandra just plays on the computer all day. She doesn't even do housework seriously. Wasn't my allowance coming out of my pension? Otherwise, there's no way Sandra could afford to give me $500 a month, she said. Moreover, my mother-in-law continued, Sandra is the one managing my pension, isn't she? You might have told Robert otherwise, but I'm sure you're dipping into my pension, she accused, puffing up her chest and glaring at me. I glared back, not to be outdone. It's true I've succeeded as a business owner. You're lying? Divorce this lying wife already. You should live here with me and Kevin and Carol. Besides, there's no proof that Sandra's earning money. Here it is, she said, as I pulled out my paycheck and showed it to her. The sight of it left my mother-in-law, Kevin, and his wife slack-jawed. We've not used any of Mom's pensions since she moved in here. If Mom ever wanted to leave, Sandra has been managing it so she could live independently. But instead, Mom, you've been bossing Sandra around, interfering with her work. You're the problem. If you don't like Sandra, you should leave right now, Robert asserted. I don't believe any of this, my mother-in-law insisted. We don't mind if you and Kevin temporarily stay, but some patience should be expected. We didn't want you to live here in the first place. We only agreed because you begged us, Robert said, glaring at Kevin and his wife. Kevin and his wife broke out in a cold sweat, not used to Robert raising his voice. Just kidding. But you sure are earning a lot, huh? I wish you could teach me some business tricks, right, Carol? Robert said, lightening the mood. While it's true, we were worried about living with our sister-in-law. It seems like she's a good person after all. Kevin and his wife smiled at each other. But my mother-in-law was unyielding. Don't act so high and mighty. You're just a bum enough, Robert. You should leave too. You should go outside and see how harsh this world can be. My mother-in-law filled with conviction, refusing to listen to anything we said. Afterward, Robert and I sighed in disbelief. Interrupting her, I said, well, if that's how you feel, we'll pack our things and move to a new house. You guys will be stuck with a mortgage, but if that's okay with you, don't come crying to us for help. If you insist, mother-in-law will leave, even with a pension. Maintaining your lifestyle will be challenging. But I guess that can't be helped, can it? At our words, my mother-in-law turned beet red and yelled at us to get out. Wait, you can't be serious. We don't have to do that, do we? We protested. Yes, if you two are here, we're safe. Kevin and his wife tried to stop us. But my mother-in-law gave us a fierce look and said, don't you dare talk back, Kevin. You're going to be a CEO, aren't you? I don't mind you using my pension, so just start a company and show us how successful you can become. I'll show you what happens when you defy us. My mother-in-law's words were filled with intensity. Hearing this, we decided it was best to no longer get involved with her or Kevin's family and left the house. Of course, the mortgage on the house remained, but we changed the ownership to Kevin's name. Some time had passed since then. While there was some residual dissatisfaction from that incident, having been free from my mother-in-law's sarcasm, we had resumed our normal routine. Just when we were working from home in our new apartment as usual, my mother-in-law called my husband crying. Kevin has taken my pension and disappeared. He hasn't come back in a week. Carol and I are left alone in the house, and we're in trouble. Please help us, she wept. After my husband calmed my mother-in-law, he asked why Kevin had gone missing. I gave all of my pension to Kevin for his startup, but he ended up spending it all on gambling. When I confronted him about it, he disappeared, she cried out desperately. Since my mother-in-law couldn't continue the conversation through her sobbing, the phone was handed to Carol. Could you please call us back? We can't live like this. Ever since Kevin failed his startup and sold the house we were living in, our parents have disowned us. My dad won't forgive us for selling that house. We haven't been able to reach either our dad or mom since, Carol pleaded with my husband. At the sight of them, my husband muttered, I knew it, in a disgusted tone. That's unfortunate, but don't involve us. We warned you when we left, didn't we? Even if you come crying to us, we won't help you. You can report Kevin as missing to the police. It's none of our business, he said, and then hung up. I was shocked, but my husband said they got what they deserved, and I agreed. After that, they called my husband's cell phone many times. When my husband, frustrated, answered the phone, Carol would cry about not knowing how to report Kevin as missing. We were surprised she didn't know and gave her advice to call the police. However, they still couldn't find Kevin. Just when we thought they might not find him, we heard that Kevin had been arrested for bank robbery in another state. Apparently, he did it to repay his debt. It seems it wasn't his first offense, and he would likely face actual jail time. Carol can't go back to her parents' home and is still living with my mother-in-law in that house. It's uncertain whether or not she will divorce Kevin. That's probably the least of her concerns right now. She registered with a temp agency and is struggling with her first job ever, but she's somehow making ends meet every day. As for my mother-in-law, Kevin took all of her pension, and now she has to repay his debt. She has also started working part-time to repay the debt. My husband and I expressed sympathy for my mother-in-law and sister-in-law's family, but we have made it clear that we have no intention of helping them, and we have cut off all communication. They must be tasting the harsh realities of life that my mother-in-law always talked about. Despite the changes since my mother-in-law moved in with us, my husband and I are glad that we have returned to our peaceful days.